but your words don't mean nothing when they break. Thought you were harmless, but you're venomous to touch. Now I'm drunk off the poison in my heart. I'll meet you on the way down. There's no time to break. We're getting closer to the edge now. You're my best mistake. I'll meet you on the way down, down.
Happy Monday, everybody.
Yeah, man, this is getting to be busy times. Busy times. Like I'm going out to VidCon, and then next week I'm going to go to San Diego Comic-Con. And then next week I've got the family reunion, and then the next week I'm going to DEF CON, and then I'm going to go to
SchwidCon.
ConCon.
Just call it SchwidCon so you can,
Ugh, it's
Yeah, man. No, it's
a lot of traveling.
Crazy times. Yeah, because I think that the two of those. Well, I have Comic-Con, and then I'm going to DEF CON, and then instead of your family reunion, I'm going to Gen Con.
Although you're totally welcome at the family reunion. Oh, by the way, I confirmed. I confirmed with my my aunt and uncle that the Brushwood suites are available, and both Josie and Penny super stoked. This is going to be their first big sci-fi con. They're gonna join us for San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah.
Oh, two of the kids.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, Josie was sort of like a thought where it's like, well, I mean, she's currently set up as my companion pass holder, so cost me nothing. She'd probably dig it. And then there's that jealousy moment. It's like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to tell Penny. So I got as far as saying like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to San Diego Comic-Con, and Josie's coming with. And she goes, well, San Diego Comic-Con, from what I understand, there's lots of Steven Universe things there. And I'm like, oh, no. You've cut me off before I get to the part where I am asking you if you want to go as well. like you're already injecting yourself into the story.
Yeah. How are you gonna figure out passes for that?
Hey, boss. Who's got two index fingers?
This is a fairly high stakes hey boss though. Like normally it's just like telling Bryce to wait at the hotel for a little bit while everything can figure itself out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I mean, seems to work out, man. Always seems to work out. That's all I know.
But also, you're doing a panel.
Yeah. So I'll have like
you'll at least get one guest pass.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. And then and also it's like who's gonna, so the guest pass goes to Penny, and then it's like who's gonna look at my 11-year-old and say no? I mean,
probably a security guard.
Yeah.
Character building moment.
We'll see.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Hello.
Justin and Andrew, it was a July 4th weekend. Everybody else had long weekends. We were doing some work here. Did you guys have a little bit of time off? Do anything fun?
I wrote.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked on episode 2 of Raise the Dead and watched Stranger Things.
Made time for a couple of earthquakes. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I would actually love to hear about that. I woke up this morning.
We didn't get any of it. We didn't get any of it up here.
Can I spoil an upcoming Modern Rogue episode? In 40 minutes.
Wait, yeah, Brian, I think you can spoil your own show.
In 40 minutes, I was able to get a legit success condition on Jason Murphy performing every single part of my stage fire eating act. He was able to get every single one of the moves done correctly. And then as sort of a blow off at the end, we had him try to remember the routine and just try to do it. And and it was hilariously not at all close to what
That's great.
but I don't know. It was kind of great. Like he texted me this morning like hey, how should I treat this giant burn in his mouth?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, to be honest, just enjoy it while you have it. There's so much blood in your mouth that tomorrow it'll be an echo and the next day it'll be barely an itch. Like I woke up this morning and my mouth was all puffy, which happens when you eat fire for over an hour or whatever. And I was like, kind of badass.
Gross image alert, but
Yeah, it's
just a little.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the night of too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, I felt validated as a teacher that I was able to essentially put somebody on the double black diamond accelerated course and have them complete it in 40 minutes.
Or that any, meth addict Carney can eat fire. I mean, one or the other.
hey,
Or
Jason's not a
devalued.
carny.
Yeah, he wishes.
Jason. Alrighty, I think I'm good to go. You all ready to go, Andrew?
Ready.
All set.
All right. Well, then let me count you in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to the Weird Things podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Justin Robert Young,
Well, hello.
Brian Brushwood,
Ahoy, mateys.
Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Hi, that's me. I'm working the dials.
Are there any actual dials there?
There's a good number of them. We don't use them too much. There's mostly like EQ, but it's mostly faders. But people don't know when you say fader, so you got to say dials so that they know what you're talking about.
Fader sounds cooler though.
It does. It is.
Hey, you know what's cool is waking up on the 4th of July in the morning, just to clarify that, and your whole place is shaking.
Yeah. You guys had some trembler. You guys woke up in a Kevin Bacon movie.
Yes, and I tell my significant other, I'm like, hey, check it out, hey, check it out, it's cool, it's an earthquake, like it's a meteor shower at first. You're like, oh, cool, and then it's like, wow, it's a little bit long here, like, wow, this is going on a little longer, huh? Yep, that's the longest one I've ever been in LA, and then you go check the news, and you're like, yeah, longest earthquake. It's it struck like 120 miles north of here where it was the most intense, but
How long was it?
it was hard to measure time, when you're in the middle of it, but I would say it felt like it was going on for like 10 seconds, 15 seconds or something.
Yeah, I saw a clip on Twitter that seemed like it was 10 or 15 seconds. It was a thing where they were streaming on Twitch, and so they were like, "Oh yeah, a little shake." Oh,
Well,
it's still going, huh?
Then what happens is they say, hey, you seismologists, like, just so you know, there's a 1 in 20 chance of a bigger one following. It could be the foreshock or the aftershock, but it's like 6%, like 6% or something. It's like, well, obviously that's not going to happen. Next day, guess what? Turns out was no aftershock. That was the foreshock for the day before, and what this was the bigger one. And so I'm sitting in my bed reading my iPad or something like this, and all of a sudden it starts to shake, and you hear, like, we have these the window shades, and because there's something in your house that will move. There's always something that you'll hear moving, and they start to go tremble back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'm like, hey, Rosh, and then I hear, she comes running out of the room, the door, like, and we're like, oh wow, another earthquake, and everything's sort of shaking, and it's shaking longer, and we're kind of counting. I'm like, well, in hurricanes, you get away from windows, but in earthquakes, like, you go towards like a door frame or something that's gonna like protect you. And so we go stand by the door frame, and then we hear this sloshing sound, this weird whoosh, whoosh, whoosh.
Oh, was it the pool? I've seen all the videos of pool water going nuts.
We open up the door, and there's the pool sloshing around, and people standing around. I'm like, did somebody jump in there? And no, it was just the pool water going splashing up over the overward, and all the neighbors are there watching, and I'm like, good thing we rent, and
There's actually 2 videos that kind of illustrate how this looked in real time, and also give you a sense of the scope. Bryce, if you can look up the Dodgers.
Yes,
this was during the game.
What I loved, because I watched them first, I saw 4 or 5 of the water sloshing videos, and then I came across this video of the Dodgers during the earthquake.
And so, yeah, if you are familiar with, for those of you unfamiliar with American geography, LA and Las Vegas are about, what would you say, 4.5 hour drive apart. And so you are going to see this amount of shaking at a Dodger game.
6.4 magnitude the other day. How are they continuing to play baseball?
I don't understand how the players can't feel it.
Players feel it. They just know that there's nothing above them that's going to fall on their head.
Well, and also that video, they zoom in so far for that shot that exaggerates the movement because the camera.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. But even then, it's like, that kind of movement in a camera shot would normally come in like as somebody is like jumping on the cameraman during a moment of jubilation. Like that is usually very, very even zoomed in. It takes a lot for that to shake that dramatically. And then Bryce, if you look up NBA Summer League, this takes place in Vegas, and it's a similar situation where everything is shaken. Like it was a pretty intense quake to go from that region to the other, and also have it be that visible and noticeable.
What it was when I felt the ground beneath me
Correct.
moving left and then right and then left and right, and it wasn't stopping.
I was in Los Angeles for one, Mark, in a home, and the windows started to rattle. And so,
You can see
correct,
like the
as soon
trellises
as-
shaking
as soon
above.
as you could feel
Oh, you can see the
things
speakers
moving.
shaking.
Yeah,
A
I'm
little bit.
going to say that
Yes.
the difference there is swords of Damocles dangling over you, where you really care about shaking stuff.
There is a lot more hanging from the MGM Garden Arena when this happened, and so they called the game and got all the players off the court. Unlike baseball, where they just played through it.
Murmur and react,
Like-
and you see people immediately heading for the exits. Very calm, very deliberate.
Oh yeah, they just stop in their
Courtside,
tracks.
You could feel it.
Yeah, but that was apparently the thing that they initially pointed out, was that they had the big, which I don't think is quite as solid as they used to be, actual just like bricks that were hoisted to the center. Now a lot of that space in between it is empty because you can make lighter, thinner panels. But
It'll still kill you when it falls.
it will kill you. Many deadly projectiles that could kill many people.
So this is one of those, reminders of, the Earth is below us and has its own plans, and earthquakes can kind of come out of nowhere. And, in California, they talk about, what the big one. And, and the other thing, too, is that you hear a lot about the Yellowstone volcano, but there's like a fault line or whatever there, like a volcano in Yellowstone could be a big deal, too. An earthquake going off there. Like there's a lot of, in the Northeast, there's some faults here. Obviously California is where we got, the big San Andreas, and now the faults have gotten bigger. So yay, nature.
Oof.
I always maintain I would rather be in a hurricane than an earthquake.
And then you move to the Bay Area.
Well,
Look, I didn't move there based on weather preferences. But I don't know. Like you have time to worry about a hurricane.
hurricane seems like a fairly traditional. Let's use a fully approachable Hearthstone analogy here. A hurricane is like a control player, where it's like you understand, you're just you see it coming and you can get ready for it. Whereas like earthquake is full face aggro. I mean, it's just like you don't even know.
Yeah, ready or not, here we come. At least with a hurricane, you can leave. Like you can get out of the way if you want.
We can see hurricanes coming. We have radar technology.
Although, I mean, that being said, hurricanes are also like guessing where it's going to land. Often ends in folly. Like you drive 5 hours to get away from it, and the next thing you know, you could have stayed exactly where you were. And
See, I think you guys are leaving out the dark horse real threat. Freaking nothing's worse, nothing's scarier to me than a tornado.
I'm with you.
Because earthquakes, where they tend to happen, you tend to build buildings that are ready to handle an earthquake. And yes, previous disasters like the San Francisco fires of the early 20th century notwithstanding, in general they seem to have their act together, right? Hurricanes happen; they occur where hurricanes tend to happen. Freaking tornadoes happen over 1/3 of the center of the United States, and they just land and destroy everything. That's what terrifies me.
Because even the worst damage with a hurricane, like being from Florida and knowing a lot about kind of hurricane damage, we had always understood that New Orleans was going to be screwed if it ever got hit. Like that was a problem that had been known for decades before it wreaked the kind of havoc that it wound up doing. There's no stopping a tornado. Tornadoes
Right.
just you're gonna rip through.
Well, and we got close to. Apparently, there was a tornado actually touched down briefly in Pound Town. Some people call it Dripping Springs, but there was this moment where, like, crazy storm outside. Huh? It was kind of a crazy storm, and then but meanwhile it's 11 o'clock at night and I'm in my underwear, and then there's that brief moment that it's like, wow, that's a really intense storm, and you find yourself taking the first step of turning on local television.
Yeah.
and then you see the guy talking, and then you're like, well, maybe I know it's late, but maybe I'll put on pants. I mean, I'll put on. You know what? Maybe shoes and
tornado
socks, and then you just start to slowly. Your brain is just like, okay, under the stairs. That seems good. Okay, we'll get a couple more minutes, but apparently that touched down and destroyed a bunch of crap just around the corner from us.
Yeah.
And then there's there's also the intergalactic disasters and things like that potentially facing us at any moment. You get a rogue solar flare. We don't know how many of those events have happened where it's just, messed up with the upper atmosphere and superheated things for a while and things just baked off.
Man, I really wonder how people will feel. It's so wild because one of those events, let's say it knocked out telecommunications on half the planet for, I don't know, 4 or 5 days, right?
And we've talked about before in the 19th century there was a major solar flare event that knocked out telegraph poles and it was significant. And if we had that happen today, it would be very, very, very destructive.
Yeah, catastrophic. But it's interesting because, like, on the one hand, there's part of my brain that wants to say, well, that would be a very boring 4 days that you wouldn't be able to watch Netflix. But then I think after the event, you would hear about the phenomenal death toll of people who weren't able to get their medicine and the people who weren't able to eat and the people who are trapped in elevators or whatever who died horrifically. And it makes me think about it both in terms of a natural disaster. Like, would it feel as potent as a 9/11 event if because it happens slowly and because it's difficult to, point to exactly one thing? And then it has me thinking about, cyber warfare. And there's that book 1 Minute After that is about what if somebody detonated an EMP with the intention of taking out all the electronics over the United States. I don't know. I hope that I never get to find out any of the questions that I have. But those are the things that run around in my head.
Well, the solar storm of 1859, if that had happened today, we're not just talking disruption. We're talking about satellites getting fried, right? And, satellites, hundreds, thousands of potential satellites getting fried, which would then mean major disruption to telecommunications that could take several years to compensate for. The geopolitical implications of all of a sudden what happens when certain countries and stuff realize, hey, there's no satellites observing these borders. And things like satellites are used for controlling shipping, helping things navigate, and a lot of stuff. We kind of think it's not just we can't get our cable TV, but a lot of things are very, the whole supply chain is very dependent upon that. That would be big. If you started taking out, a ton of your power grids, right? Your power lines. If all of a sudden your power grid stuff starts to fail, you have large parts of, forget the developed world for the moment. In the undeveloped world, the developed world, you're losing power for months or longer because all of a sudden there's just there's shortage of all these materials. You think about when we went through hurricanes in Florida, some places took months to get power back, months to get power back. In a developed country, a Carrington level event, you could have large parts of the United States spending several years trying to climb back out of that. And we had, like 7 years ago, there was like a coronal mass ejection from the sun that missed us, but had that hit us, that would have been that level.
Yeah, Wikipedia says that the solar storm of 1859 was estimated at 0.6 to 2.6 trillion dollars of damage.
And that's 150 years ago.
They estimate the current cost of a similar event to the U.S. would be that in 2013.
Man, that would be the time to start pirating, right? Like not in terms of downloading things, but like a real like taking over ships pirating, right? Because like all communication in shipping freights is all done by satellites.
Yeah, or at the very least, I mean, it's like suddenly it's the purge because, like, I mean, now we're back to what, testimony? like nobody's got the ability to record anything or know who's going. I mean, I don't know. That's terrifying. That's super scary.
Yeah, and you hope it's one of these things that's overblown. Like, I mean, again, we talk about Y2K being overblown, but damn, people did a lot of preparation to prevent Y2K from causing more widespread problems and stuff. And that's often one of those like, we panicked about Y2K, and it's like, yeah, but
it's like
we wrote a lot of code.
Depending on how you squint, you could also say, no, we correctly assessed an existential threat and we took action. And you could make a debate about whether or not we over prepared for it, but certainly it made a difference.
Yeah. Hindsight's a wonderful time to be able to say if you over prepared, or under prepared, And there was an industry that propped up around sort of scaring people, and now it's the hard part is you get like opportunists come in there to scare people, and you get like they're just. I'm like, well, yes, I think they are. Doesn't mean there's not a problem. Doesn't mean it's not a thing. Door-to-door salesman used to sell lightning rods and stuff, and.
I mean, I believe factually, not one of those houses is less safe for having a lightning rod.
I mean, unless it's like the house where you're like, Damien lived in the Omen, but that's just neither here nor there. That's that's what I think of lightning rod. Shot.
I'll tell you what else it makes me think of is we just did a series of Modern Rogue episodes where we talked about shortwave radio, and that kind of totally decentralized ability to communicate becomes just monstrously valuable in a world where we are increasingly reliant on our cell phones and existing power grids and all that stuff. When the crap hits the fan and when all the electronics get knocked out, you're gonna want a shortwave radio.
Oh. Who am I gonna talk to?
Well, I mean, you're gonna listen. You're gonna get the truth.
Okay.
All of a sudden,
yeah.
Facts become a very valuable commodity to know, like how many days
Roger.
away.
This is Bacon Eater Burbank. Who's out there? Good looking.
Oh, there's so many jokes that hopefully we'll talk about in the after show. In the meantime, you can get After Things, our after show, if you are a patron at patreon.com/weirdthings. Again, patreon.com/weirdthings is where you not only support this very show, but also you get our you get our After Things podcast, wherein we talk about entrepreneurial skills, what we're working on, projects, real numbers, real issues, all your emails. It comes in the After Things show. And sometimes we talk about shows and movies that we don't want to spoil here on the main show. Maybe there'll be a little bit of discussion about Stranger Things season 3.
You loved it. Yeah,
so-
I bet you loved it because you love the Stranger Things. I bet the things just got stranger.
Yeah, that's the thing is I don't like it when they're just strange. Like Doctor Strange, get out of here.
Yeah.
Not strange enough. I like him stranger. I like the stranger. That's something that I've enjoyed giving to myself.
Oh, jeez.
Anyway, go ahead on over patreon.com.
We almost made it.
Hey, we talked about this last week, and now we got some footage that SpaceX was able to recover one of the fairings. The fairing is that big thing that covers the satellite, keeps it from bugs flying into the the windshield when they send it up into space. When we went to go visit SpaceX, we saw where they assembled them. They have 2 of these things. They're big enough to hold a bus inside of, and they cost like $3 million a piece. So SpaceX put parachutes on one and was able to capture it. Now we've got the fairing cam where we can actually see video. Do you guys see this?
Yeah,
God,
dude,
no.
it looks like a Pink Floyd concert. Like, I guess it's the ionized atmosphere or whatever just glows around it. It's like the end of 2001. You just feel like you're on a trip and become a space baby.
exactly what's happening.
I mean, look at it. It's like looking into the face of God, man.
Remember those globes you'd get at Spencer's?
Yes.
It's like being inside a plasma globe. Literally, it's like what it is.
And then there's like sparks dusting off, looking like it's a star field. I mean, it's truly remarkable footage.
Oh, yeah, like all I can hear is like the lunatic is on the grass.
So, man, I would love to see the footage, like from the perspective of formerly Mr. Steven. Now it's what, Ms. Runaround or something.
What?
Ms. Tree is what they.
What we're
Like
looking at
this
now.
footage?
Yeah, no, but specifically, I want to know what it looks like for the crew to get the projection of where they need to be and hustle over there and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to see it like a documentary story.
It's a bunch of guys with slide rules, you know.
Slide rules.
Got to keep it old school, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Slide.
it is really amazing footage, and question that comes up is like, how come this thing's able to re-enter without heat shields? And the reason is because this thing's so big. It's not going as fast as, I mean, it starts off as fast as anything else up in space, but once it hits the upper atmosphere, it's got so much more surface area. So it's relative, we'll call it the relative density is less than a capsule, which is smaller, whatever. But because it's like a boat, why a boat floats, you crush that metal hole and it sinks.
Yeah,
Same
so
reason.
like basically picture a capsule as a bullet entering the atmosphere. This is a feather, and as a result, it hits a much lower terminal velocity.
So very, very, very cool to watch and to see that, just seeing it from that point of view. And also, one of the things that when they'll talk about, like you watch shows where they talk about in space, when astronauts are reentering the atmosphere, like, oh, we're going to blackout. Blackout is when you can't talk to them. And the reason there was a blackout period on most spacecraft was because of that plasma, as you saw. It acts as a Faraday cage and blocks all EMF from going to or coming from the capsule. So the space shuttle was different, though, because the space shuttle surface area was so large. It actually had a point at which, like, I think on the rear rudder, where they could actually communicate through.
Do you happen to know why they changed the name of the boat from Mr. Steven to Ms. Tree?
There was a Reddit post on there. I think it might have to do with just like if they change ownership or something, because they actually they lease them from somebody.
Okay, got it. So it was a gig, and then there was a transfer of ownership, and along with that, you had to change the name. Okay.
Yeah, but again, those are owned by somebody else, I believe. But yeah, and a woman's name. I don't know, woman's touch made it happen.
Do you think they were
here we
intentionally
go.
going for like a wink and a nod to mystery? Is what they were going for?
In June 2019, Mr. Steven was renamed Miss Tree after being purchased by Guise Offshore GO, a company with a long-standing contractual relationship to SpaceX as a provider of Variety Marine Services.
That has to be like a wink to mystery, right?
Works for me.
Sure. Yeah. I'm in. I like that they're Variety Ocean Services. Like, well, we're going to catch your rockets, but also we have juggling.
Water juggling.
Yeah, just whatever. It's a variety. What do you need?
Also, we're going to retrofit it. It's a glass bottom boat. So we're going to have some customers out from Florida, Boca Raton, on holiday. They're going to see a bunch of octopi really fast as we hurry up and catch a fairing.
Nickel slots, too. Don't forget those.
We're multitasking. We're going to get to international waters. We'll conduct a couple of weddings. We're everything. We're everything.
And the world's finest Diana Ross tribute.
By George. We have some other news coming out today, which is that SpaceX was able to test their Raptor engine. That's the next generation engine that's going to power the Starship. I guess they ran it for something like 50 seconds, which, remember, a spaceship engine only has to run for a few minutes, and it kind of does its job. So they got it up to 50 seconds. Elon Musk says that they had a vibration issue that they think they've solved from a previous test. He says they may be able to do a test later this month and possibly a whole update on the program of building Starship, which, again, is their plan to go to Mars and every place else by the end of this month.
It's so close now. Like living my whole life thinking this is all far off future, and you sort of get used to the idea of the future never really comes around. an awful lot of the future has happened in the last 10 years. And I'm pretty stoked about it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. I was moving my box with my virtual reality headset out of the way here.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I can't hear you. I'm just holding my handheld supercomputer that is a internet-connected global device that I've fantasized about my entire life.
Oh, side note. So on the iPhone, have you noticed if you use FaceTime how your face is looking in the right direction?
No.
Oh yeah, I saw this story. This is crazy.
So
I think this is a new
remember-
iOS beta or the new iOS 13 feature, right?
Yeah. So remember when I showed you a while back how using the front-facing camera projects those dots and you can move your face back and forth?
Yeah.
Okay. So that, anyhow, that's a fun feature. What it does for our audience out there didn't see it is it basically they create a 3D map of your face. The iPhone, the current iPhones do this. They put the project dots on your face. They make a 3D model of your face and put your face on it, and you can rotate it and look at it. You can stare right at your phone and it's just put your finger on the screen and go sideways, and you're looking at your profile because it's just making a 3D map. So now using that tech, when you're on FaceTime, instead of you looking off at the camera, they can adjust it to make it look like you're looking at the person there by just changing the point of view slightly.
Is that I think that's awesome, but also we are ceding permission to technology/corporations to fundamentally alter our most intimate moments, to tell what some poetic folks would call a greater truth that we're looking into their eyes, but that is in itself a lie. Wow, that's a really complicated thing artistically and aesthetically for me to wrap my mind around. Because
all right, but how much is it already doing that we kind of don't care about? How much is it lightening? How much is it making the image aesthetically pleasing already? At what level is it real?
Well, and it makes me think of the all of those scenes on the bridge of the Enterprise where they play kind of fast and loose whether or not is this a giant Skype call or is this some kind of, because like they'll do a sideways shot and you'll see someone on the screen in profile looking at Captain Picard or whatever, and then other times you'll look at it and they're staring right down the barrel of the camera. So I mean, I guess I guess I was already cool with it on the Enterprise, so I guess I'm with it in real life. But I don't know. It feels fairly remarkable to me.
Oh no, I think it's wild. But already, there are comparisons between different phones because internally, and this is not stuff that you even you really even get access to. But phones treat photos differently. They automatically lighten them. They automatically compress them in a certain way, and that's different. You can have two of the same phone with even like some of the same hardware take a picture, and on the OS side they're already altering it. That's something that we've just grown up with. We live with.
And clarify, like doing things to please you, like evening your skin tones when you see your photo, you don't feel like, oh, I look ugly. Like beautifying, doing things. There's a lot of little subtle things doing there. On our Skype call we're doing right now, it started off, of course, like back in the day with like the Bell telephone, like, well, just get rid of the high-end frequencies and stuff and just use voice and slightly less annoying or whatever. And now,
well, and like even now, we optimize our color correction to make skin tones look the best. And as a result, like the three of us on screen look like we have similar skin tones, even though in real life, there we go. It's probably not the case. So I suppose this is just an extension of the same thing. But man, just objectively sort of altering the reality of intimate conversations. I hadn't paused to consider how I feel about that because, like, all of a sudden there becomes, in the battlefield of marketing and position for cell phones, now all of a sudden there's a new battleground, which is when I talk to somebody on a Samsung phone, I just feel like they're more present and they're more dialed in. It's like, yeah, because we filter out every time your eyes dance away and you're distracted. And we also smooth this out and we also make them look thinner or whatever. Like, at what point do we get to a place where we're not comfortable with these little nips and tucks and enhancements?
I think it's when it does something people are very aware of, they're upset with, like we've seen with social media, where things were working the same way for years, and then politically speaking, something happened. People are like, "Oh my God, there's an outrage!" Like, you've been asleep, And I think that's the case here, where it'll gradual. We've talked about this before, like even the algorithms used to compress our video and our sound and stuff. We talked about last week, we showed a really cool compression thing that, compresses voice, but some of it, it just regenerates this stuff. Like the pixels you're seeing right now, they're averages, they're approximations, they're guesses. And that gets to be even more extreme. There was an article, it was like 2 weeks ago. Remember the story was like the deep fake with nudes, nude or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like, the media is.
This was an app wherein you could take a picture of somebody or submit a picture of a celebrity, as where all the examples were, and it would use a machine learning to basically show you to remove the bikinis or clothing in
celebrity photos of women. Let's be clear, it was
it only worked on women. Yeah.
And at that point, of course, by that point, as Patrick Stewart famously said, you've seen everything.
It's too late. You've seen everything.
So
also, the other weird thing about that story was that, like, after it was reported, like the guy who made the app was making the rounds. Less than 2 days later, he took it down because he felt so much shame for unleashing that technology on the world.
I think he was also anonymous while it was happening.
Yeah, that's true.
And made his money. He made his.
Yeah, he was selling it for like $99.
Well, and it was like, the funny thing is like you had tech, blogs were covering this and like, for shame, look at this. And we see the Verge thing, like, but let's go ahead and make some artwork to show you what this can do. Because if you're on the fence about buying it, read this article about this horrible thing.
Yeah.
And
where they also listed the price. Like it kind of felt like embedded media.
Yeah, it was like, I'm not sure coverage. Now, we live in this genie's out of the bottle. We've talked about deep fakes before, and some people have said, like, well, we've had Photoshop. Photoshop's required a person to do this. There was no advantage for me to go through Justin's photo feed and Photoshop every image. Not that I haven't thought about that. When I can press a button and I can say, make Justin look stupid doing this or this or this or this, and then send that to all of his friends, and that's done times a billion with everybody. At first, it's going to be outrage, and then we're going to get used to the idea of don't believe anything, but just the scale. We've had manipulation before, but manipulation's always required time and somebody to do this. But when you can take, a video of somebody and press a button and make them nude, or you put their faces into a porn, and there's that moment of, oh my God, we're going to go through this window of like, oh my God, I can't believe this. No, it's fake. No, really, I think it looks so real. And then I think we'll get to the other side of it.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think we're going to get bored with the idea. It's like, I understand what various types of flesh look like, and whether or not it happens to be accurate or not. At some point, we're going to be over the idea of it. Like I'm thinking about with your Oculus Quest, the idea of how long until there's some real-time version of this where you could just walk around as what in Snow Crash they called a gargoyle, where you just live in a reality where real-time everybody's clothes are digitally removed and you get to walk around in a crazy bunch of naked people world.
That's the way I walk around already, Brian.
Look, I mean, we're talking 20 minutes. This is right around the corner. It's got to be, right?
Yeah. Did you see the Mike Tyson's face on the Family Matters intro?
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah,
turns out he looks great no matter what body he's wearing.
Yeah, it was funny, but that's exactly. I think we're gonna expect more outrage, expect more shock. We're gonna get this, and it's gonna cause problems and stuff because we have this belief, we want to believe things, and so you're going to see in politics, you're going to see politically speaking, it's so good. We're looking at the faces of Mike Tyson.
And to be honest, there's a little part of me that's kind of stoked about the idea that we'll be less obsessed in a world where we can decreasingly trust whether or not somebody actually did or didn't say something 20 years ago. I love that the natural response is, well, let's pay attention to what they're saying today. You know, it's like maybe I did or didn't say that thing 20 years ago. Who could tell? None of us remember. None of us trust computers. How about we listen to the way I feel about things right now?
Yeah, I agree. The thing that's frustrating is, like, I would say there are current events in the political climate where you hear people saying, well, remember when this famous person everybody knows, said this, and you're like, no, they didn't say that. You took the context of that, but if you listen to the fuller thing, but nobody wants to go back and listen to the other thing because they're totally happy having this belief. And I hope that we, but look, man, you look at like videos today of like, oh, look at this 5-second clip. It shows you everything you need to know. And you watch 6 minutes and you're like, oh no.
You're like, oh no, it's the exact opposite. Yeah. I would like to, look, the weak link in this chain is the humans, and it's the humans that need to change we have to, just as this is the libertarian streak in me, just as without making cigarettes illegal, we as a society seem to have lost our taste for cigarettes and in general are giving them up for healthier alternatives. We got to do the same thing for our addiction to outrage. And right now, it's not Philip Morris that's doing it. It's your Gizmodos and so on that are benefiting or had been profiting from the outrage engine. But the big thing is not going to come from legislation or regulation. It's going to come from us as a collective set of human beings deciding that we've lost our appetite for instant gratification and for judgment without full context.
Here, Schwood 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's the thing is we're asking for, we want more filters and gatekeepers. Great. Then you're going to have more filters and gatekeepers, and do you think that will solve the problems? No. Let's be less reactionary.
The more dials and knobs we give ourselves, the more complex it gets more pervasive of Jack just banned the Nazis. It doesn't get less complex from here. It gets more complex from here. The more you put on the platforms to judge what you want. But again, I don't know. I think that we're getting there a little bit. I do think that there's progress being made culturally. We get used to our social media world.
I got a question for you. If Twitter, let's say either a third party with permission from Twitter or Twitter itself allowed you to alter, we all agree that Twitter being in charge of curating what we do and don't see, we don't like. That's what we don't like about Facebook. We in general would like to believe that we're hearing the authentic thing. But what if they offered the opportunity for, it's like one day you wake up and you're like, oof, I can't even today. I'm going to enable for today, for this week, for however long, I'm going to turn on blue pill mode, where it's like I'm just not going to see the stuff that's clearly designed to incite me to outrageous behaviors or unkind words without merit. And let's assume, for the sake of this thought experiment, let's say it's pretty good. Let's say it's pretty much everything that biometrically, upon reading, you would feel bad about and get yourself in a state over, could be filtered out temporarily, and you could switch it on or off. Number one, would you try it on for size? Number two, would you feel like that's a good or bad thing to have even available?
I'm all for that. And the problem that we face is that, once people realize that, you can get somebody deplatformed for something you don't agree with by putting a label on them that may or may not fit, and that became weaponized, that was sort of like the social media version of, swatting somebody. People do it all the time. And I would, assuming that work, I'm all for that. But the problem is, it's like the goal of some people isn't, oh, protect me from this. It's stop this person from speaking ever.
But that has its roots in advertiser boycotts, right? The same playbook that is used now on social media is the same thing, and you see it with shows and products and podcasts and everything, where you go to the advertisers and do it, because that used to be the way that you could get the attention of the television network or the radio station that the offending parties were on. Now it's a button. You don't even have to go to Charmin and say, hey, you're supporting this. Did you know that blank, blank, blank? Now you can just say flagged, abusive, and for good or ill, something needs to be done with that.
Yeah, I mean, but it comes down to that. Our attitude is like, hey, let individuals sort of decide kind of thing. Like, if you don't like it, ignore it, whatever. But there's the other way of thinking is the fear of like, well, we're capable of understanding what's right or wrong. Other people aren't. And we got to stop this bad information from getting to those other people who aren't these brilliant, critical thinker geniuses like we are. And I think that's the very different attitude. There's that attitude of like, I don't want to keep it not for me, but we've got to stop this from spreading because people will believe this falsehood while, we believe our own falsehoods. And I think that's the big gulf, is that it's just, the one thing thinking, I think everybody should have the opportunity to decide if it's true or false or make up their own opinion. And there's another group that says, no, we've got to keep this from spreading to other people.
You know what I can see happening is on the iOS app, when you are looking at the map of all things, and to be honest, I think this is a sort of out of step, out of time thing that they have, but there's a little air quality index that tells you how the air is at different places, right? Green to red. I could totally see that being a machine learning addition to the Twitterverse, where it's just like, hey, these are the words, but per the settings that you've decided, or I don't know who has control of what part, but there are certain phrases that are designed to initiate outrage and get people to react emotionally.
Isn't that kind of what Facebook is doing with their warnings about stuff?
I don't know. I'm unfamiliar with this.
So Facebook and Instagram have technologies that they're putting in place to battle large-scale misinformation campaigns, conspiracy theories, anti-vaxxing information, like 9/11 hoaxes and stuff, like big things that we all generally kind of consider are not correct but pervasive information. And so YouTube will do this too, where if you end up on a video about like the moon landing being fake, they will also give you a link this is real information about the moon landing.
Yeah, and it's not just conspiracy stuff. As somebody who has been on YouTube a lot, looking up a lot of historical clips, it is everything. Anything that took place that involves a thing, there is now a Wikipedia citation below it to say, like, let's say you're looking up when the large scale draft went into effect for World War II, and you're trying to find newsreel footage. Totally random example, right? You're going to find the Wikipedia stub before like World War II facts below, like World War II was a conflict, but began on this day and that day. So I don't know, man. That's one of those things where I can get it from the platform as to why they're doing it. I made my bones on the Daily Tech News Show of saying that trying to police specifically political speech is a portal to hell. Like, there's no winning that. Like, that will always be something that somebody will be upset about. But I can get the general idea of like, okay, well, we feel bad if people are believing that 9/11 didn't happen on our platform. And this is the large scale hub for people finding that out. We would like for that not to be the case. I could see the desire to do something about it, but I don't know. Again, it's like every time that I think we try to put, one more filter, one more barrier in place. I just don't know how effective it is.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, say like there's an article that came out, I don't know much about it, but like the story is like Amazon's removing books on like conversion therapy, which, the idea that, read this book and if you feel gay, you'll be straight, which is, we'll say, probably a very dubious for a bully thing.
That would be a hell of a third act, man. Like that would get out of here, Dan Brown. This is a page turner that'll change your life.
Now, I don't know the full story why this book was pulled or whatever, and I may be extrapolating, but it's like hey, I can still buy a bunch of books on, I don't know, astrology, homeopathy. I mean, the Echo app has astrology on there, has all this other stuff, and then dangerous stuff like homeopathy and things like this. And I'm like, once you say we're going to stop you from accessing this information,
well,
I kind of think you got to have a pretty good criteria of how you decide that.
If you want to see what the other side of that looks like, remember that Facebook, before the Boston massacre, the bombing, they were able to hide behind safe harbor. They were like, we never do blood and gore. We never do any of that stuff. These are our terms of service. But then after that, people were posting photos, of course, the aftermath. And they were like, well, this is so important, so newsworthy that we have to allow people to post these pictures. And in that moment, they lost their ability to shrug shoulders and say, we're not a publisher. We're just a internet conduit of communication. We don't curate. But at that point, they, by accepting their own rules, they did. And it makes me think, even my own wild hair thought just now about like sort of a air quality report tweet by tweet of whether this is highly controversial, whether this is likely decided to or designed to incite outrage or whatever. All of a sudden I realize that what I'm proposing is to place the Twitter corporation as the ultimate arbiters of literally what is truth. Because at least Wikipedia defines what is truth by, okay, what is the article at which point everybody has pretty much stopped arguing? Whatever that is, where all sides have decided it's not worth their volunteer time to correct every little aspect of it, we can pretty much decide that's where truth is at this moment.
But Wikipedia has its own, bias problems too. It's like 90% of the writers are male, number one, and you get people who are in charge of like, this is my fiefdom. I am the arbitrator on this article, and I will say what does or does not go. And you have editors, and there's super controversial stuff on Wikipedia that like, there are cases of where like, no, this is factually true, but this writer does not want this thing to be in there and stuff. And I love Wikipedia. I'm not and I think it's the best example we have of how this can work. And even then it's just rife with problems. Like, when you enter into the politics of it.
Well, I was reading a thing by a fairly well-known YouTube creator who was decrying the fact that she had a Wikipedia that was like out and out creepy and out and out, it was like mining her old, public history of stuff to post about her friendships and who she used to talk to and who she doesn't talk to. And it's like, that to me is something where that's a concrete example of, this slides when there's 90% dudes that want to catalog literally everything about this one chick. And she felt like that it had far crossed the line from like, here's a stub where people can understand who I am as a public figure to this is an invasion of privacy and there's no short or easy way for that to go away.
Yeah. One more article that's kind of cool and scary at the same time, mostly cool, but then a little bit scary. There's a thing called unsupervised machine learning, which is basically give like a big data set and you say you want an outcome, and then the computer system, the machine learning algorithm figures out. Like, they were like cool examples of it. Like, hey, here are like, like 4 sticks attached to things that move. Can you get from point A to point B? And, after thousands of iterations, this thing learns to walk and builds a walking algorithm better than anything that we thought of. Okay. They've taken a bunch of scientific papers and said, hey, here's a bunch of these, statements about stuff, whatever. Can you start to predict or can you make inferences upon this? And they're realizing the machine learning is starting to say like, hey, this might be a new discovery, this might be a new chemical combination, this might be a possible area of research, whatever. And it's been very exciting because you're taking this big huge knowledge of science and then realizing connections between things we hadn't thought about before. And give you an example of how something like this works is Einstein actually, one of the things he got recognition for is I think he wrote a paper describing photovoltaics and stuff, like how photons can knock electrons out of position, whatever, and you can do that. And there was an article, somebody wrote something on like lithography about using basically how to etch into metal. And 30 years later, you get transistors, and you get CCDs, and you get stuff because somebody says, oh, this thing over here and this thing over here, and those two things aren't that connected, but you make a connection, And then you get this amazing piece of technology because buried in papers, like, the light bulb, Edison's light bulb using the carbon filament, somebody else had written about that before, but it's like, man, it's a curiosity. Who would want to use it? Moving right along.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
very exciting.
There's a particularly good Sam Harris podcast, his Making Sense podcast. He has an expert where they talk about this in the medical field, and of course the primary example that we point to is the idea that since Watson won Jeopardy, it was going to revolutionize the medical industry or whatever. And it has not turned out that way at all. But along the way, though, there's the real problem that the rapidity with which so many papers are being published, tens of thousands of papers every single year, you can't expect any kind of general practitioner to be keeping up with all of that. And so somebody like, Gary Kasparov is still a big fan of the idea of cyborgs, essentially, humans working together with AIs in order to handle big data sets and figure out connections and stuff. But how long until we realize that why do we still have the human part of everything attached to it? Why don't we just have machines reading all of the articles out there? And then how soon until why don't we have the machines write the articles because they'll be better at writing more effective, accurate hashtags to everything, all of the tags on it, so that other machines can find it easier.
We're going to see bit by bit, like I know in like radiology right now, that's one of its areas where it's pretty easy to show how the machines are better at diagnosing stuff. And the issue with Watson is extremely capable, but you're trying to apply a lot of things to a field that's very big and extremely conservative. I had to go do like a routine checkup and like, oh, we're going to do these tests on you, whatever. And like, here's your guidelines for this test. Like, don't do this before 4 or whatever. And I'm like, I wonder, and I go look up online and I find out like, nope, that's not true. That's no longer considered true. There are these other studies that say, you can have this test done this period, whatever, particularly if you're this age group. And I realize like, yeah, it's like, this is the guideline the doctor's given by the hospital, and this is the thing they've been saying for 20 years, and they're not going to change it anytime soon because nobody's going there and looking at it. You look at like salt sodium guidelines and stuff like this. A lot of these things we just know are not true at all. But man, does it really hurt? We'll just keep doing it. It's like, well, maybe it does. So it's just a very conservative, slow to change, which is good in some ways.
Well, and certainly it matters when you think of human attention as a finite resource. If you are spending, let's say, 0.5% of your day thinking about your salt intake, and yet biologically you are one of the people for whom sodium levels in no way affects your blood pressure, then those are thought cycles, your most valuable commodity that are being robbed of you or from you. Yeah.
I think that the rate at which machine intelligence accelerating is way faster than human intelligence is. And somebody pointed out an example, like, here's an example of machines are good and people are good. Like, yeah, 10 years from now, the machines will be good at all of that, in that particular case. And, everybody's hesitant to want to, whatever your field is, particularly doctors, you spend that much time training and doing this, like, you're probably not excited about the idea of having your diagnosis done from a computer system. But I've had so many bad experiences with bad diagnosis and stuff for things that I live for the day, because I've never had somebody the first time tell me and get it right. It's been the second or third time they figured out how to, treat something from like, God, my chin quiver, whatever, things like this. And it's always been frustrating for me because I hold the profession in high esteem, but I find that many practitioners have it more from an engineering point of view of like, well, look in the book and see what it says here. Well, it doesn't match that. Yeah, but it's the closest to the book thing,
If anybody has seen The Wire, then you understand that incentives are aligned such that you want to give an answer for which you will never get in trouble. Yep. And part of that means whether it's right or it's wrong, whether your gut tells you one thing, whether your brain tells you another thing, for a fact that there's no chance you could get sued if you tell them this answer. And that affects things.
Incentives are the way to look at everything. They exist in every single system. They're not just a capitalist thing. You can get rid of money and everything and have a purely political system, religious system, or whatever. They exist. Among monkeys, they have incentives. Bacteria respond to incentives. And when you look at the world from that point of view, things make a lot more sense.
Well, and imagine if those get automated, right? Suddenly, you have a machine that is maybe lighter to diagnose certain conditions because the hospital en masse wants to be more protective against, malpractice suits. Is that something that would get better or worse with automation?
Well, that's interesting
and
because
administrative control.
Because then they could set that different ways where it's like essentially you have different brands of hospital where it's like, hey man, if you want a freewheeling possible 1 in 100 shot of curing your fatal disease overnight or possibly dying from crippling unforeseen circumstances, then go with brand extreme, X for extreme.
Yeah, I mean,
I also think that now you can begin to take some of the diagnosis away from the actors that have the most stake in it. In a world where this is more machine learning, then now you can get second, third, fourth, 1,000th opinions a lot faster.
yeah, I mean, I like the idea of like, I'm going to go to one place that's just going to give me diagnosis, and I'm going to go somewhere else to get treatment. And we've seen that in systems where, in our system, you get insurance companies that, want to stay away from giving you more expensive prescriptions and stuff because it costs money. In single payer systems where they don't spend anywhere near as much on elder care, as far as like they don't do hip surgeries on 90-year-olds, and they don't spend much on prenatal, but not on, they don't do heart transplants on 5-month-old infants and stuff because the cost to everybody else. And so you can find these trade-offs everywhere, and I like the idea of like, well, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take it over to this mechanic to tell me what's wrong, but I'm going to go across town to this mechanic to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there should be more blinding. I think everyone should be blind all the time.
Yeah, blind them up.
Blind everybody. Blind everybody.
Right.
Blinds are like
Hey,
normal
no, it's not
smell.
blind. Are these picks? These hot picks. These picks.
Picks. All right, we're gonna talk about Stranger Things season 3 in the after show, but or on After Things. So I'm gonna pick a YouTube series that I got into watching. I don't know if there's any hip hop fans in the house, but there's a cool little thing that I think is actually interesting. It's called the Cave by the producer Kenny Beats, but it's a little web series where a rapper or rapping group will come in. He's a beat maker and producer. He takes 10 minutes to make a beat, and then they freestyle over it. They're short, fun little videos, and I think it just is such a great way that we're kind of transforming music. It is not the 2005 movie, The Cave.
It's not the horror movie.
Yeah, it is on the Kenny Beats YouTube channel. But I wound up getting into a rabbit hole with all that, and it was pretty cool. Yeah, the Cave episode 1. He just started uploading them in March, and he does about one a month. But if you like hip hop music, you will enjoy it.
Hey man, I got into a cave with a bunch of monkeys, specifically night monkeys. Saw the new Spider-Man movie. It was great.
Yeah.
Far From Home. It was great. That opening was great. The scale of everything was great. The cuteness of teenagers who are clearly almost 30 was great. Everything was great. I loved it.
Cool. Bryce?
I just saw on Netflix they got a concert. They got a concert film on Netflix from Japan, but they translated it, which you don't really see a lot with those sorts of concerts. And it was very cool. It was a singer that I've known. She's kind of a legendary singer, but I had never really looked up the lyrics and stuff. So hearing her sing a lot of newer songs, but translated from, and she did the translations herself because she's bilingual. It was really cool. It's called Laughter in the Dark. It's from Utada Hikaru. It's on Netflix now, but it's really cool. It's kind of a sparse sort of concert setup. Is a live band. They do some really cool lighting stuff. They do some video bits, but it's kind of a light touch and all that stuff. It is very cool. So yeah, I think anybody could really enjoy it.
My pick, which I'm surprised nobody made before, is oh my God, Spider-Man: Far From Home is amazing.
Oh, I'm so glad. What's funny is like I felt the absence of any kind of reaction, and I was like, well, maybe I was the only one who liked it this much.
I heard you mumble something muted about a movie, Brian. I wasn't really paying attention because you just had. I don't know. So that's great. I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about because I'm thinking about Spider-Man: Far From Home, which was this movie. And yes, they are above high school age, but it's the youngest Spider-Man cast we have ever seen. Andrew Garfield was 30, literally was 30. He did a great job of it when he played a high schooler Peter Parker. Nicholas Hammond was probably like going on 50. I don't know when he did Spider-Man back in the 70s, but I think it's a cast that plays that age pretty well. Great cast. I had so much fun, and I don't want to oversell this movie, okay? I'm going to say, like, not because, it's perfect, but it was so much fun.
Would it be a right way to couch it? In the wake of Avengers Endgame, it was quaint, but something quaint can also be absolutely wonderful.
Yes, and what I loved, things you pointed out was, like, I'm just going to, like, it opens up where we get kind of, like, what does it feel to be a teenager post the snap?
Yes.
What is it? What is this like? The way they do this I was dying, Brian.
Oh my God. That opening was that perfect superposition of like, that's a choice. Okay. And then it's like by the fourth slide, I realized what this had to be and what I was looking at, and I just immediately was just wiggling in my seat, and then I heard and felt my wife start laughing next to me. It was amazing. What a great way to open it.
I thought, like, there have been I heard some criticism, like, well, they kind of handled the snap, the biggest event that ever happened to humans, in a light way. Like, well, this is 6 months later, and this is a thing. Spoiler alert: it happens after Endgame. When you haven't seen Endgame, they come back. What I loved was I thought it dealt with the most realistic view of what it's like to be a person in the Marvel universe, and the idea that, like, there's like, how the most horrific thing to happen to people, how they handle it. Like, yeah, imagine if one day 9/11 was reversed.
Right.
Imagine we live in a world where 6 months ago, 9/11 got reversed and it got undone.
And that's the key, is that it's 6 months ago, because month 1, we can't believe it. Month 2, month 3, month 4. And then at 6 months ago, suddenly, you're announcing to your high school class, like, so you guys know this happened. Everyone's back. It's great. Now let's talk about the little things in life.
Yeah. I thought it dealt with that reality for me more so than Endgame. Endgame, we're gonna have a therapy group. We're gonna talk about this. It's like, okay. I mean, one of my I'm gonna spoil a little line. Doesn't do anything with the plot, whatever. But one of the kids makes this comment about, like, and now they teach us about Thor in science class.
Yes.
And you're like, yeah, it's really messed up to be a kid in that world. It's cool because your superheroes are your superstars. They're real. But the other hand, it's like, yeah, I guess we live in a world where aliens are real and gods are real and stuff. Like there's the the spoiler where the science teacher's theory on everything is witches. Baby's move.
No, it was just delightful. There was a. I'll try to keep it non-spoilery, but if you've read the comics of Spider-Man, then you had an idea who Mysterio was going into it. I saw the movie of the 6 of us who went, I was the only one who had an expectation of who Mysterio was going in. So as a result, everybody else got one experience that felt like a surprise to them, and I got one moment where I'm like, oh, good, we're past that. Okay, good. All right, now I don't know what's going to happen, and I loved it. It was delightful.
Yeah, and I would say that those of you who are familiar with Mysterio, I would say that you still have there's a slow revelation of other things going on. We'll put it that way. Delightful. I look forward to seeing it again because I have a feeling looking at it, even in the eyes that I had before, might be a different experience. But love it.
Can we give a little tip of the hat to the first time J.K. Simmons has showed up in an MCU movie? That when he shows up playing essentially Alex Jones, the character that he was playing.
I was trying to save that from telling Justin that. I didn't want him to know this.
Oh, well, it's not a surprise. It's the same character he's doing in the video game. So it's like
I wanted that.
which I haven't played.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Anyway.
I had an hour-long conversation the other day dancing around it because I didn't want to ruin that.
Consider the hat tipped.
Anyway, good movie. I liked it a lot.
Great. It's a minor point, and minor point, but it's it's the end credit thing. So don't worry, it's not a thing in here. Just I'm telling you that, so that's the end credit thing, which is better to know it that than expect that.
Although I did not see the point of the second end credit thing at all. I didn't.
Oh. Another conversation, Brian.
That's it. And we're done. Hey, man. How's it been?
The beauty of this, though, is that I love the fact that one of the things to look forward to 2019 is that we can still, spoil our friends' superhero movie going experience.
I'm blaming myself. I literally, the entire weekend I was like, shit, we should go see this movie. We should go see this movie because I know this is I'm literally just dreading
This moment
right now. This moment right now. I knew it was coming. It's the reason why I stayed up way later than I normally do to watch Stranger Things. Because I knew I couldn't be screwed on both. I had to know at least one from stem to stern.
Yeah, there's so many more surprise Spider-Man. Far From Home, rather. It's such a fun movie.
Very
fun.
exciting.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's been spoilering. It's been weird.
Excited to see that movie now, I guess.
Dude, you have had nothing taken away from you, and that is a fact.
No, I'm actually just mad at Dr. Pepper. I think I mentioned offhandedly to you that they're doing this Dr. Pepper promotion where you get a free ticket to see the movie.
Yeah.
If you buy enough, these fridge packs or whatever.
Yeah.
And I went to the website and they rejected my receipt. And because it's July 4th holiday, no one's working the friggin' Fandango thing, so I can't go see this movie. And I don't want to. I don't know.
I
want
have to pay for this movie.
I don't. This was the offer. That's
Fair enough.
frustrating. So hopefully one day.
Yeah. I can't wait to watch it again. So I mean, it's
and I think it'll really stand up because you could tell they really thought through. It's a fairly complicated shenanigan that's going on, and I look forward to tracking all the bits that they made sure that there's some kind of continuity team making sure that each aspect is accounted for. I thought it was great.
Can I tell you something funny? There is in the original trailer that came out for this, where you see Spider-Man talking to Aunt May, he's wearing his sort of classic Spider-Man suit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not spoiler at all, whatever. In the movie,
he's wearing the techno one?
Yeah, he's wearing Iron Spider.
Yeah.
Want to know why?
Why?
The deal with Marvel and Sony is Sony gets all of the box office, Marvel gets the merchandising.
Oh, wild.
So if you're Marvel, you're like, the more outfits we put Spider-Man into.
Sure. Well, they did some of that creative commercial editing for Endgame, right? Like, they didn't really have Thor much in the Endgame commercials because
he
looks
physically
different.
looked a little different.
Yeah.
They wanted to hide things, and they did that. There's some stuff, if you watch the trailer for this, they did a similar thing to a couple things too. There's some stuff that's hidden from you until you watch the movie, but the costume change was a thing made no point, and then you're like, oh yeah, their deal is merchandising. Like, oh, Oh.
All right. Well, I don't want to risk saying anything else to.
All right. Yep.
All right. Anybody need a break?
Yeah. Let me. I don't know if any of the kids are even here.
Okay. Justin, Andrew.
I'll use a break.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll sit here and then take my break after the boys come back.
All right.
Bryce, what's going on?
Welcome to Didn't Watch Spider-Man Things.
I know. God damn it. I actually was literally thinking about going. Well, hey, Brett hit me up on Wednesday and was like, hey, let's go Wednesday. And I'm like, all right, well, I can't because this is one of those, like, Ashley will be mad at me if I see it without her.
Yeah.
So then it became like, okay, now when are we doing it in these other days that we have off? And one day got eaten up with Stranger Things. And the other nights we had like plans. So
There was no time for it.
that was it. Unless we were going to be really ambitious and go see it during the morning. Nobody really had that kind of ambition over what should be a relaxing weekend. And I'm in the situation I'm in. And I almost went to go see it this morning. I
Yeah.
almost like woke up to be like what? There's got to be some place around here that's showing it like. But I would have been screwed anyway, unless somebody
Yeah.
had like a 9 o'clock showing, and even then, I'm like screaming back here to make it.
Yeah, I know. Because I knew just this Fandango thing wouldn't go through, like, because they rejected the receipt, but then they sent the real twist of the knife is that they sent me an email saying, "Oh, we accepted your receipt," and then you log in and it's not there. So I knew just because of the long holiday that no one would be there to answer this piddly support email.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to. I don't know the principle of the thing. It was a principle thing.
I know. Because your end of the bargain was not upheld, and
Yeah.
that ticket was far from free.
That's right, Stanley,
Full cost.
Marvel. So, but I think that promotion's ending soon anyway, so I might as well just bite the bullet.
Yeah.
Though, like I know Brian and Tom, I'm sure we'll talk about it during spoiling time tonight. So I may.
Unless you go like right in between.
No,
those
no.
shows, right?
No, and I
No.
can't fit that in. But I might actually wait a little bit then, and hopefully the peripheral stuff I pick up from spoiling time, I'll kind of.
Wait, so you don't think you're not even going to check the theater right across the street there and
Oh, I just don't have time for it. Like between the shows.
when does Cord Killer start?
It starts at 6, but I gotta get back here and working on stuff by 5:30, and I gotta eat at some point. And so unless it's starting like right when we're done,
Just booking it.
right, it would be door to door. It's not counting 20 minutes of trailers, sitting through all the credits, all that stuff. So maybe
All right.
maybe tomorrow morning. Hey Andrew.
Andrew, I'm gonna use the bed.
Okay, how's it going, Andrew?
Hello.
Have a good fourth.
Yeah, I mean, got work done. Finishing up a novel. I leave for New York this week to go for the Thriller Awards.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's Roshni's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Roshni! If you can hear.
Did you hear?
Happy
I said
birthday,
happy
Roshni!
birthday.
Hello, happy birthday.
Yes.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, I just try to get this novel done, and then I'm reading up a lot on VR development stuff, and started reading a good book, The History of the Future. It's about Oculus.
Okay.
And a lot about Palmer Luckey, which you're a very interesting guy, and I think I think there's a point in your career where maybe you should wait to then get political.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate, especially from what I've heard. He thought he was signing up for just a silly thing, and then it turned into a bigger thing.
Yeah, and there was a lot more. There was, I think he won like $100 million lawsuit against Facebook.
Wow.
Because at the time, what happened was when that blew up was in the middle of a political season for a company like Facebook and Oculus, particular new acquisition, to have somebody be attached in politics, and anyway, particularly perhaps against somebody who's that side. Apparently Zuckerberg was saying, like, can't you just say that you support like Gary Johnson or the Libertarian candidate? Can't you just say you support him? And when your employer, of which even if they buy your company for $3 billion and you work for this person, when your employer tells you you should support this other person,
That's a crime.
yeah. So I guess Palmer won like a civil lawsuit or whatever against that, but it's just a messy thing. I mean, it's just a messy thing that I feel because young guy, his early 20s, and it's like we have. I can go turn on the radio if I had a radio. I can go watch people. I can go watch singers, musicians who we know have done violent things towards women, horrific, violent, criminal things, whatever, towards people who are celebrated and marched on stage and whatever, who we're like, oh, that's okay. We see past that. And we get a 20-year-old guy that supports, politically speaking, does something that.
So something about this far from a night attack bit.
Yeah, exactly. And then he's this villain kind of, and I don't know, maybe he's a horror. I don't know, but I'm like, that's the thing that gets me is it's like, let's apply these standards across the board then, so everybody knows where they stand. And I'm a young guy, I feel, but listen, he's almost a billionaire. I'm sure he's fine. but it's just they talk a lot about how here he was living lived in a trailer on the family in the driveway of the family, working on his VR stuff, and how his what seems obvious wasn't, and what he did was when Carmack wanted to go get into VR with id, he got every headset he could, every headset from everywhere. All the companies were trying to make them, and the 19-year-old kid built the best one and solved the most problems. It's a fascinating story. That's a history of the future, the book I'm reading right now about Oculus.
Hey, so are we doing entirely Stranger Things for After Things?
Because you haven't seen any of it, huh?
Yeah, I haven't seen. I will have nothing to contribute. So maybe it might be better for me to peace out, and do prep for Cord Killers.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't object.
You can do that. I watched the finale, so I can at least talk about that.
Okay, all right. Well, then here, I'll turn it over to you three gentlemen.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome.
Get out.
I will get lost. Although I will say that I watched Pleasantville with the kids, and it's a delight. Man, that movie really holds up. It's great.
Oh yeah, Pleasantville's fun. It was Gary Marshall? Forget. But yeah, what a really neat movie.
Awesome. All right, cool. Have a great time, guys. Bye.
Sweet.
All right.
Gary Ross.
Gary Ross. Yes, thank you. I knew I was wrong, but I had part of it right. Is ready?
Yeah, I think I'm good to go. You good?
I have a hard out at 1:35. I got to go to the dentist. So.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Yeah. Well, then whenever you're ready.
Do it.
I'm telling you now. Bryce motions for me to continue.
I know, right?
I know. Ready? Hold on. Okay, hold on, Bryce. I'm sorry.
It's your dentist appointment, not mine.
All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to the After Things podcast. I'm Intermene, joined by Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Hi, that's me.
Justin Robert Young.
Hey.
All right. Let's spoil us some Stranger Things. If you've not watched Stranger Things season 3, tune out now. If you don't care to watch Stranger Things season 3, then listen to us. But I don't know why you would listen to us.
Can I? So the both of you have seen all of season 3.
Yeah.
If I can,
Please tell us your viewing strategy. How
Okay.
did you do this?
So I've done this many times, to which I think to strong success. The idea of just watch the season finales of shows. Watch the first episode and watch the last episode.
No, but this is
This
is a technique that Bryce has spoken about multiple times on Night
This is
Attack.
news to me. This is news to me. I should have watched that final episode of Weird Things to know this.
I'm just saying,
Mhm.
because you, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Bryce, you've primarily done this with animes, which very often can be notoriously
bloated.
voluminous in their episodes and very slow moving in their pacing. And
Right.
so if you watch the beginning and the end, then at the very least, oh, wow, a lot of things happened. I'm curious to see how we evolve from here to there
Yeah.
without just being frustrated by a slow moving plot.
And I feel like I've gotten a lot out of that technique. There's what was that Netflix show about the kids who end up in an abandoned version of their town? It was The Society. I did that with The Society on Netflix, and the season finale sucks, so I didn't watch the show. there's an anime on Netflix that I watched, and the end's this cool, trippy quantum mechanics time travel thing, and so I'll get to watch the rest of that show. But yeah, I did that with Stranger Things because apparently I did finish season 2. I thought I didn't even finish season 2. But I watched the recap and I was like, no, I remember all of this. So that made me think, well, I can probably just see where this all goes to, and I can extrapolate. And if it's worth it, then maybe I'll see where we got. But I don't know. How did you guys feel about season 3?
Where to start? So season 3, obviously this was supposed to be kind of a reboot season for them. The Duffer Brothers were public about the fact that they felt that they went too quickly into season 2, in part because with child actors, you need to make sure that you're shooting things as quickly as possible so they don't rapidly look different than how they did before, but also because of pressure from Netflix. This time they took a lot longer time to shoot it and write it. So I will say going into this, because it colors how I thought about it, I wound up reading randomly on the internet while it was either casting or shooting that there were a lot of Russian characters. And the speculation was that this was going to be kind of a Red Dawn inspired season. And if you're unfamiliar with the film Red Dawn, it was an 80s movie that effectively gave the premise is that the Russians and the Cubans team up to take over America, and they're the town that our main characters are in, high school age main characters, then basically have to like form a resistance in small town America, and that is kind of the plot there is that they have to fight back against the communists as they take over this town, and it really taps into the very childlike idea of like, man, I'll bet you nobody can take us if they're trying to find us in these woods, right? That we know our town better than anybody knows our town. We'd be able to fight back. So I thought like, wow, that's a really rad premise. If you take the Stranger Things cast, which are, they were kind of jocks in the Red Dawn movie. These guys are nerds. This is, you have the addition of a super powered child. So it's like, that could be cool. Wow, look at this. You could do, and then you could also work in some of the mind control-y, upside downy kind of stuff into it. Like, I'm like, man, that would be a rad way to take it. And then you find out as you watch the show that it's like, no, we're doing the same thing again. There's some creatures from the upside down, and they're tied to the upside down, and there's going to be another big laser cannon that's opening up a crack in the universe. And this time it's the Russians, because it'd be stupid if we had the same shadowy corporation do it a third time. So now we'll do it with Russians. And it's like, all right. I guess there was a lot that through the first 6 episodes, there was a lot that I liked more in the first 6 episodes than I did in season 2. But by the end of it, it's like, I just don't know where we're going with this here, guys.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy the first 4. The first 4 I thought were solid. I said, they're not. I think season 2 had some really fun high points initially, and then they did the crazy tangents with the sister story, which was just so pointless for me. Here, I thought it was a lot more streamlined, and 4 episodes in, I'm cool. And man, it went off the rails. And then what I was like, kind of first 4, I'm like, it's a little silly. And then it got sillier and then dumber and dumber, in my opinion. I mean, I've never written anything like this, so my hat's off to the Duffer Brothers for creating Stranger Things, be able to do this. But it turned into like the dumbest G.I. Joe cartoon I've ever seen. We start off like when in the mall where we see in the back, we see the delivery show up and we see guys with Kalashnikovs, okay? Yeah. AKs, these Russian rifles. I'm like, that's a dumb thing for somebody who's trying to do something secret to have on them in Indiana, because
in a mall.
If you're worried about what's that?
In a mall.
Oh yeah, I'm like you're in the back of a mall, whatever, and I'm like that just seems, if you want, like, just make them look like regular security guards. Give them having them have AK-47s was just a dumb idea, and I'm like, you could read them as we could figure out they're Russians because maybe they're actually just talking in Russian on the radios. But that was just like a random cop going to the mall, sees this, there's their plan to shoot him. It was a dumb choice. And then, when we get in the underground mall, how do the Russians have this secret base? They're running around in Russian uniforms and full military regalia and all this. It was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is dumb cartoon stuff. Like, you could have secret Russians under the mall. You could do all this sort of stuff, but like, make them work for Intercorp or something like this. And, oh no, there's an energy. There were so many leaps of logic that drove me crazy because I'm like, it didn't need to be that. They just needed to have somebody in the writer's room going, how do we make our characters smarter? Because that's one of the show's best when people act smart. It's bad when people are dumb. And then, then we get the whole, once Hopper, they find that other house with the power relay underneath it. They're like, okay, he's the chief of police.
At what point does he call up the chain? At what point, eventually there's this moment where they have their contact with Paul Reiser, who they had made contact with in season 2. But it's like, there was a lot of points where I'm like, man, no one's like, you guys are like best friends with the chief of police. And like, granted, there's like some story elements of why one of the characters might be cross with him, but it's like, nobody else? Nobody else?
There's not an agency dealing with this?
Yeah.
No, he's not calling. He's not like, hey, National Guard, like this is getting out crazy. We need to go check out this house here. Again, if they want to get to where they want to get to in the story is like, fine, they show up and there's been a fire and the power company's like, now there's a transformer blew up. Okay, cool. And then like, and we saw Hopper there acting mysterious, weird, like, oh, maybe he sabotaged it. He is kind of nuts or something. They could have done something like this 4 minutes, 5 minutes to create a subplot of why he's not trusted, whatever. Instead, they have him act dumb. Everybody acts dumb. And that's my problem is this is like to get to where they wanted to get to. It's this sort of like, it'll be fun. Like, no, it's bad writing. It's like, I loved compared to Spider-Man. I'm watching a movie about a kid with spider powers. I don't quite know how they work, but I believe everybody's acting pretty smart. The 16-year-old kid is acting intelligently. I think the other people there, for whatever mistakes they make, you kind of understand later on why they made those mistakes. This just drove me nuts because I'm like, nobody, you have a house with a friggin' transformer underneath it where you arrested a Russian and you spend the day, there's no reason. And then like, well, we'll call the one guy and, told my girlfriend when they called him, like, yeah, the army's going to show up after the problem's solved. It's going to be
they show up immediately after the mind flayer is destroyed. Like on a dime they show up.
I called that the moment they finally reached him, and I said, this what drove me nuts is I kept saying, this is what's going to happen. The kids are having an argument, like when Elle says, I can't find them, and the kids are arguing, what do we do? I'm like, if she just walks in and says, hey, I found them, to stop the argument, I'm going to be really pissed. Argue. She walks in, I found them. I'm like, this is dumb. This is so predictable and dumb. It's predictable because if you figure out what's the dumbest way they could resolve it, you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is just a franchise that I'm just unsure of its purpose, because initially the show that I really fell in love with was like, okay, let's we have a really cool, interesting science fiction premise where we're going to drop like a really sympathetic Carrie into, the Goonies, right? And now with those two things together, we can go anywhere we want. We can literally have anything happen. We can have every fantastical 80s movie happen in this little town, and we're always going to be forgiving of the fact that it's like, this season it's pirate treasure, and this season it's a serial killer, and the next season it's the gremlins, right? Like, there's a million different things that can happen, and we can always understand that they will have a way to get out of it, and we can watch these characters grow. I don't know. There was just maybe like that beginning part, and I'm like, oh man, well, this is really cool. All right, so I'm not in love with the fact that the Mind Flayer is our big bad again for the third season in a row. But I do like the idea that the Russians are like, they built this mall so they could have this other thing. I'm like, oh, and then we have the shady mayor. Wouldn't it be crazy, right, if like the Russians think they're doing this thing and they're trying to stay covert, and this is before it gets into like the fact that there's the goddamn Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade Nazi castle underneath Hawkins.
Oh, it's or used Spaceballs. It became
Yeah.
Spaceballs.
Spaceballs, right? But it was like, okay, man, wouldn't it be cool if the Mind Flayer, because these people are all meeting secretly, now the people that the Mind Flayer doesn't realize that the geopolitical spectrum of what's happening, that he keeps infecting more and more of the Russian conspiracy that has like taken over this town, and now they start acting more aggressively, which brings like a Cold War clash that now these kids are at the epicenter of. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Oh no, we're not gonna do any of that. We're gonna have a bunch of like 10-minute scenes that no matter how close to death these kids are, there's a certain point in which, and this is a great creature horror sequence in the show, that the Mind Flayer has now turned into this like Godzilla style creature that is now stalking through the woods of this small town
Near the fun fair, and near the fun fair, and you're waiting for this thing because that's been in all the artwork. Like, what's gonna happen? No, don't worry. The fair is fine.
Yeah, it's going to go the other way. And then beyond that, once 11 rips his face in half, then it just is like screaming and crying next to the house, and they just like peace out and then have like another 3 scenes where they can talk about their feelings for each other.
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, I'm like, wait, are we ever going to go back to like the main villain with its face ripped in half? Like, did it die? Did it slink off into the woods? Like,
Let's have an argument about this. Why Hopper and Joyce should get together, even though our last emotional scenes with Joyce were her seeing her ex-boyfriend on the couch watching Cheers together, and we're like, wow, I really miss Sean Astin. He was really good for her. Yeah, but Hopper's here. No, Hopper's an asshole. Hopper's a drunk. Like, Hopper's the worst thing for her. Oh, wouldn't it be? No, don't go there, because there's a lot of this. What if we ship these people? Like, why didn't I ask you to? Like, we don't need to. Here's my, one of the things I rant about is people sometimes confuse. They think sometimes what we think is a genre is more of a milieu or environment or a setting. And genre, when you think about from a structural point of view, is a very good way to approach things, to say like, a thriller is there's the physical danger. You're trying to outrun or trying to stop a physical danger to you. Action movie is things that have action or change the environment around you, trying to solve this problem, prevent this thing from happening in a sequence of events. A road movie, you're going from point A to point B, whatever, trying to resolve stuff. Spy movies there's going to be a layered, there's genres the way you apply to this. And I'll guess this is the question. I may have asked this before. What genre, structurally speaking, are the Harry Potter books and movies?
Structurally speaking, they're almost like murder mystery. They're like mysteries almost, because there's always you find out Voldemort. It's Voldemort at the end.
Well, yeah, no, but every book or every movie, there was a new mystery that was either related to the core mythology or something that was happening. It's like at some point, Harry Potter has mysteriously entered into the Triwizard Cup, and no matter what, everything will be moving toward him either competing in this thing that he wasn't ready for, or figuring out why that happened while multiple actors are trying to figure it out.
Yeah, the actions of the character, the conflict is why is this happening? Let's find the reason. Let's find out who's behind it. That's what the kids are doing throughout the books. Really bad attempts at Harry Potter don't get that. They're like, they're gonna have, we'll have broomsticks and this thing and all this. Well, J.K. Rowling, really what she did is she wrote really good mystery stories set in this wonderful environment. And they're fantasy, they're all these other elements, but you could pull all of the fantasy elements out of there and you could put these kids in a boarding school somewhere and it'd be pretty damn good books. First Stranger Things was a mystery. What happened to Will Byers? And then we find out what's going on in this laboratory. What are this thing going around killing people? And you're trying to find these. And when you find the answer to a mystery, well, Will Byers was abducted by this weirdo thing from another. Like, holy cow! Well, how do we solve that? And then we got to go in the upside down and all this sort of stuff. That's what made it so cool. It was filled with these mysteries. What happened to this person here? What happened to there? Season 3, none of that. I'm like, what? It's like they watched 80s movies and said, oh, we'll have a guy that looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. We'll have a thing that looks like this. Those were all structural,
Yeah.
Genres. This wasn't.
It felt the little bit that I watched. It reminded me of watching not the old series, but the more recent MTV, the Teen Wolf show, where it's like there's like a monster of the year, but it's really just a teen drama with these characters kind of coming in and out, and there's some supernatural stuff, but it's also just kind of small town drama.
Yeah.
And it is very circular, right? It's just kind of, let's see what we can get out of these people in these relationships, and not like dealing with problems.
And I watched the first few episodes of Teen Wolf. I thought it was really well done because part of it's like it's a teen soap opera, and at the center of it is a kid going through these really radical changes. You can keep coming back to, and it could be like aggressive puberty, the story. Here's my other main big criticism of this show was season 1. We meet this group of kids. We meet Lucas, we meet Will, we meet Michael, we meet Dustin. They have a very interesting world. They're a little bit outsider kids. They're picked on, but man, they're the 4 coolest kids in school because they have hobbies, they have interests, they do stuff. They do role-playing games. They're on the radio. They're exploring the world around them. They have questions about how things work, science. They know all this sort of stuff. Season 2 starts to fade a bit. Like, we'll put them in Ghostbusters costumes and stuff. Season 3, none of that. Dustin goes off to science camp, which sounds kind of cool. Mike and Lucas, they discover girls. Oh yeah, we all discover girls are the sex we're interested in at that point. We don't lose all interest other than that. You share these things. We cut to Mike and Elle, and it's like, they're always making out. Like, they're like, one, she's got like developmental disabilities, and it's creepy now watching this kid who's a very articulate, intelligent kid making out with a girl who can't even put out together complete sentences. They're not in there watching. They're not, I love them playing video games. I don't know, but it's not like they're watching cool movies and stuff and doing stuff or getting into things that teens or preteens got into at that period. They have zero sort of thing. Lucas and Max exist just to have this sort of couples argument. These kids have no interest. We know the only person I think has any interest is Max in her skateboard, because we saw a body double with very thick calves do some skateboarding moves, and then it was like, that was the end of it. That was the end of it, Will wants to still play D&D because this kid went through some horrible trauma that nobody's really helping this kid get through. Yeah. Dustin was still kind of, but I'm like, these kids became boring. They were like, why am I watching these kids?
Yeah, because they're not. They took on the lives of superheroes as far as storytelling goes. But the thing about superheroes is that their lives revolve around beating up bad guys and maybe the citizen that they care about. Not like being a multifaceted person.
And it was like
you can be the better seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where they roll their eyes the 4th time that some supernatural element is trying to eliminate their hometown, and be like, well, here we go again. But we're excited because that's what this show is about. We're excited every time this thing happens, and that's the final episodes were very, very frustrating to me just because, like, it's like a countdown to, all right, if it's a supernatural thing that's happening, it's a countdown to when 11 shows up so she can push it with her, I'm going to squint and put my hands out powers. Or if it's a physical threat, it's a countdown to when Hopper shows up and, punches somebody. That by the end of it, they eventually, for whatever reason, also, look, for a show that has spent now 3 seasons dealing with the superpowers and the universe of the Upside Down, I'm still not totally clear exactly how it works. I still don't really know exactly what 11's powers are. I have no idea by the time that they go away in the final episode, like exactly why they've gone away, or
if they can come back, if she's just a normal girl now.
Yeah, like I don't know. I have no sense, and nobody has warned us of it. No one has made mention. Like, Will makes a point throughout the season to be like, no, I hope you don't die exhibiting your powers. But there was never a moment of like, oh, they might just go away, or whether or not that'd be a blessing or a curse. Look, if you want to do the X-Men, do the X-Men. Have the science teacher open up a school for the gifted because he finds out about L, and then his whatever proto Usenet group has also been identifying other gifted teens, and then do it.
I mean, we could so many different ways it could have gone, and just speaking to the way that it did go, my issues is just the execution of itself, where this is what worked before, and then now we'll throw all that out the window because they got. I mean, like, and they add characters. Like, I thought Max was more well developed this time. I was glad to see that she wasn't like girl Bart Simpson like she was in season 2.
Yeah. I thought probably the strongest elements of the season for me were the stuff with her and Elle, although there is a very inconsistent element, as you touched on, Andrew, on like whether or not, like, is she like cousin Balky, like in terms of her like English, like, or is she just kind of a quiet kid? Because I'd always thought of her as a quiet kid, but then in these like fairly fun scenes with her and Max, where they're like bonding as young women, there's just a lot of like, I am you are
and you're like, oh my god, like, and we're watching this Mike kid is like your girlfriend's development. This might be in a form of abuse, Oh
God, yeah.
So I had issues with that. I thought that like Maya Hawke's character was cool, but except for what they wanted to do with that was so like Steve was their friend. Steve and her get along, and then Dustin's kind of like, hey, you guys should. And then finally Steve's like, oh, I like you. And she's like, I like girls. And they're like, oh, was. Hey, audience, how do you feel about that now? I'm like, I don't know. I liked her. She's always been cool. Maybe we could have just established that early on because I didn't care where this went. I would like just have had her been part of the story, and we're cool with this. Steve was cool. We're cool. What was the point? It wasn't like, Steve was like, oh my God, girls can like girls. It was
And,
like,
like,
it was just such.
And if you want to set up like a real strong like just friendship relationship where there's no expectation of that, you don't need to go at a romantic angle up until you have to to commit to it and say, oop, no, now we're going this way. Like, you can just go that way from the beginning and keep it platonic the entire time. Like, you don't have to lean that way. Yeah.
Yeah, because it didn't matter. It didn't matter at all. And they spent so much energy trying to get us to think this is, and this is the twist. And it's like, this is 2019. That's not a twist anymore. It's like, it's like Solo. She takes off the mask. It's a girl. Oh my God, girls can be actresses. Like, no, we know this. We're ahead of you here. Start off with that. Let us watch a really wonderfully well-drawn, strong female character who, whatever, let's just go with that instead of who are you? It felt like you're trying to teach a lesson to like maybe a 1980s audience. I don't know. The Erica character.
It also felt like a lesson that we'd kind of learned before, even before we get to the lesbian revelation. Is like, Steve is an asshole. It's like, yeah, no, that was pretty much the point of all of season 2. Like the best part of season 2 was him and Dustin together, where we now realize like, okay, separated from his high school dynamic, he actually kind of has a heart of gold and wants to make Dustin just to be a more self-confident version of himself. And then the big character moment that he gets is like, hey, you don't even remember me from high school. And he's like, I don't know. I guess maybe I don't. Like, I was a real dick. Yeah. Cool. Moving on.
Yeah. It was, and like, the Erica character, the actress who plays her, great job. Eric is a person like everything that came out of her mouth, I agree with. I think she's got a lot of strong, good viewpoints on things. Yeah. Not a thing that I believe a 10-year-old is going to say or do. And a 10-year-old that is in strong denial of how geeky or smart they are. And that was like, she just got to be like, it was just.
She felt almost mascot-y in that sort of way. Very catchphrase. Like the one you would have, like, I don't know if this is a Netflix thing, but I feel like a lot of times with these streaming shows, they will have bits or characters or entire shows, in the case of the Bill Nye Show, that are just made so that people can put a subtitle on it and make a GIF on the internet. And that character felt a little bit like that in the little bit that I saw.
What's that?
Yeah, it also, to me, was it continued to take away any tension I had in the scenes. Because it's like, it's one thing, it's like, look, we like these kids. We know these kids are overmatched, and whether they're facing demons from the hellscape, or the town bully, or a murderer or whatever, we know that they're going to be overmatched. But it's like, I don't know if that makes it, if it's a hat on a hat to then give our child protagonist a younger child, to look out for. And by the time that they're like swinging into action heroically, it's like, is this supposed to be more exciting or more tension? Because I'm afraid this 10-year-old's going to get murdered.
Well, here's the problem with the Erica character, the Max character, and the Robin character is they have no flaws. They have zero flaws. They're written as, because Stranger Things first season, like there are no real young girls there, and if you want to bring a larger audience and not just make it a boys show, which is great. You had 4 boys with complexity who had flaws, who had strengths and had weaknesses. They had vulnerabilities to them that made them real. Robin, Max, and Erica don't have those, as far as I can tell. They're trying to create strong characters, which I think is great, but a strong character should be realistic and have some vulnerabilities or something like there. And the fact they didn't have them just made them feel almost like they're separate from sort of the story. The problem, Max character in season 2, she didn't do anything other than they're like, yeah, we need to introduce a female character. Like, yeah, let's introduce a really well-developed one, and that's even be even better. Sure. Let's just not create a cartoon character of what we think a strong character should be. Let's make them real.
Yeah. And when you have, you only have 8 episodes this season, and if you're continuing to add even more characters into it, that just
7 if you take out the never-ending story montage.
God, that was so long. The singing never-ending story over the ham radio in a way that, look, if we're gonna just put this out here, that's not how that would work. They would be talking over each other. That one, anyway. I don't know. It felt like I felt that the end of the finale episode really put a cherry on things. We fought the thing. All of the military came in. We covered up everything. Maybe someone will figure something out. People are moving away. People died, and it felt like, hey, you know what? That could be an okay finale. But the fact that they made a point to have this credits sequence where the Russians definitely still have more monsters and probably have another gate. What are we how are we going to stitch back all of these characters again? Because I can't imagine they're going to let these people go. I don't think that's going to happen. They could have done it after season 1, but they're not going to. I don't even know what you do now for Stranger Things.
They could do. I think I can go the show could go anywhere, could do anything. I just wish they would do it well. The comment was made it seemed like it was just sort of a fun thing. Why this much conversation about it? Because in my opinion, season 1 series was amazing. It was, and I was one of the early watchers of this thing that nobody told me go watch this thing because I watched it when it just first came out. And I'm like, what a joy, and to discover without somebody telling you about this, and then to call up friends and say, you got to watch this thing, and be like, this is really friggin' amazing. This is going to blow up. And then you watch this thing blow up. And because it was so good, to see how good it could be, and then how much it's affected culture, pop culture, the reason to dissect this is if you just a fun thing, then it's irrelevant to me now if this is what the show is, because I don't, it becomes like Star Wars has become.
And look, I remember where I was in the Democratic National Convention in 2016 when I was on the phone doing this show and the phrase that will always stick with me on why is Stranger Things special? Because it's the Stephen King movie that Steven Spielberg never got to do, right? Mm-hmm. It's oh man, you think of that as your log line in your head, and you're like, oh my God, that would have been the biggest movie of the 80s. And obviously they have all these roots and these things. And so, yes, I agree with you, ICU. Now it is just a bit of fun 80s send up. And now it's Spaceballs. And that's fine. If that's what it wants to be, that's what it wants to be. But man, that promise of like, let's take these great stories that like were archetypical of the 80s and have a little bit of a built-in allowance for like, and now ghosts can be real, and now a serial killer can never die, and now a robot can come from the future, right? Like that, these like great kind of science fiction, paranormal 80s ideas, and now put it on a show. It's like, oh wow, that's a great idea. But we're not doing that. We're just gonna do 14 more.
And it doesn't even want to be what it tries to be. Like, you know, that last episode, and you're watching the Never Ending Story song in the middle of this thing. They're like, yeah, don't worry, everything's fine. There's no weight here. There's no tension here. This is because we're putting this silly song number in the middle of what's supposed to be a super, and everybody's having fun singing this song, and we'll get some strange looks from people as going on.
But literally everyone else is in mortal jeopardy at that moment. They have time is of the essence, and we're doing this send up.
I'm supposed to feel good about this. I'm as a viewer. What am I supposed to be? As somebody who cares, you know, and who's invested in the story. And it's like my joke was like, yeah, it's like the Bird Box of Stranger Things, you know. It's like, oh, it's you know, going to a haunted house in a kindergarten. It won't really be scary, you know.
Also,
and that was
in universe, Susie killed Hopper. Like the Terminator guy gets there just in the nick of time as they're about to turn the keys. Had she not decided to sing the full song of the Never Ending Story and demand it before she gave the information, in universe, Hopper's still alive.
Well,
Elle doesn't have a dad because she needed to.
In her defense, but I'll tell you, here's the funny thing. In her defense, she didn't know the reality of it because her when Joyce and Hopper walked into the control room and Joyce stops and they have this conversation, I'm like, well, this is bad because this is going to come down to 1 second difference later on. I said that too. Did I say that? Yes, I said that. And then next thing you know, Hopper's about to boom. I'm like, why? I'm like, why must I see these things before they happen? I'm like, well, because what's going to be a dumb choice? They're going to make that choice.
Yeah.
Well, and also it's like, really, that's the only the stories that they decided to tell with Hopper and Elle, those were the only stories that we get. I mean, to kill that character.
Well, I mean, is he dead? Because
he better be.
He turned on. What's that?
He better be.
Well, I'm sorry. There was no goo like there was with the other people who got zapped. And remember, in the post-credit sequence, do we get the American? No, get the other one. And there's a sealed door, which depending upon, let's see if there's going to be a Hellboy 2. There won't. The availability of David Harbour.
That's going to suck.
And that's fine, right?
No.
But still,
Out there,
yeah, to make that pop, to make us care, like I've really part of the fun part of season 1 is like, oh wait, I'm excited for this show now because Hopper's an interesting character. Eleven's a very interesting character. Like now that kind of father-daughter dynamic is something that should have a lot of rich stuff. And like we get all the frustration, but basically the only story that they can tell is, boy, is it hard raising this girl. And Hopper, man, what a gruff guy. Now raising this daughter of his, boy, howdy, is that rough. And it's like, we get this, I think, a very effective final moment where she's like reading the letter that he had written at the beginning, and I'm like, man, just maybe some of that humanity, maybe some of that, like in any way during like the entirety of this series, like there's some element of complexity, like some, I don't know.
That letter, by the way, like, you know, when he's trying to say the things, whatever, and he decides his pocket, whatever, it was like, I'm like, oh, this will come out later. And I watched A Star Is Born, and I'm like, oh, the poem thing that you wrote. I'm like, well, this is what, spoiler, I'm like, well, this is what she's going to sing when he dies. But it worked, you know, but it was just that, like, that trope. I'm like, you know, like, well, here's this trope again. And, you know, but also, like, you know, we're talking about, like, those were Joyce's words.
Yeah, well, until the him ending it or whatever, like it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's a very I really, both the Hopper and Winona Ryder stuff, I was like, I don't get where we're going with this. And then the Steve and Robin thing, I was like, well, I really don't know where you want me. Like, I don't know where you want me emotionally with this, because like I found them both charming together. You've led me down this path to where like, okay, well, this is somebody that Steve as somebody that isn't going to college, like that maybe this is where we're going to take this kind of stuff. Oh wait, I mean, is it like a Chasing Amy kind of thing? Like, are we like going to explore like what happens if somebody who is, identifies as gay has feelings for somebody who is straight?
Not 2019.
We're not. We're not. And so it's like, well, okay, well then, kind of weird, because we were literally led all the way down here. Like, so unless you want me to just put a banana cream pie in my face and say, ooh, silly dilly dokio, aren't I an idiot? Whatever. Okay. And then the Hopper thing, it's like, so you're showing us these scenes of how fresh the memory of Winona Ryder's ex dude is, who sacrificed himself heroically, whose art is on their fridge for being a superhero. And it's like, but no, the guy who literally 24 hours ago made such an ass out of himself because of a scheduling error at the local Italian restaurant, and then drove drunk home because he's above the law. Like, yeah, he's the guy who, with this fragile woman who we care about, who has done nothing but selflessly look out for her son and the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And hey, Jake Busey was perfect Jake Busey. That was peak Jake Busey.
I thought it was, that was something where it's like, all right, a little on the nose here. We're just going to like make them mustache twirling villains, but whatever. He's Jake.
Well, but they never even rose above. I mean, that was, I guess, one of the frustrating things for me was, when the whole army of pod people are there, you're like, oh, well, this is going to be interesting. No, does not go anywhere. They literally, the only reason they needed to take over a body entirely was to quash a story at the newspaper.
Literally. Well, because, I guess, I mean, I can't remember whether or not, did we get confirmation on exactly at what point they were all pod people? Had they been pod people the entire time?
Billy apparently was quietly amassing an army of pod people to.
I don't know, to Billy. I don't care.
No, Billy was a force-fed character in season 2 that was kind of an attempt at the Stephen King sort of, let's have a mortal bad guy who's really a source of menace, and he was pushed into there, didn't work, whatever. This was all about justifying why Billy existed in that horrible, like, Elle scene. Oh, I see. Your mom was nice and your dad was abusive towards you. And then it was like, oh, and then when Billy's about to like, take over, Elle, and she's like, your mother was beautiful. I'm like, your mother's name is Martha. It was like a Martha moment. It was so bad. Like, this is like, screenplays by people who've never had their asses kicked by bullies. Here's one of the things you never do. Don't bring up their mother. Do not bring up your mother if you're trying to stop somebody from kicking your ass. Yeah, the monster can. It was just. But hey, the CGI fireworks they used against the monster, that was great.
It was a very spectacle moment. That was the moment that made me go, okay, so they're treating these like blockbusters. They're trying to treat these as like the summer yearly blockbuster movies, but also they're 9 hours long, and they also still don't feel like they get anywhere new or enough space for any one person to
wanted
shine.
You wanted to make Predator. You didn't even make Commando. You made Raw Deal.
Oh gosh,
I gotta run. Hey, if you haven't watched Stranger Things yet, watch it. Maybe maybe you'll enjoy it more than we did.
Season 1's
and I they could turn it around. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm still gonna subscribe to their newsletter. I want them to succeed, and it's easy for me to nitpick because I only have to watch it. I don't have to make it.
Yeah, fair point.
Are you guys going to consider doing the finale only next season?
No.
Okay.
I gotta run. Bye.
All right, bye.
It's...
I I definitely have questions on whether or not like where it goes. Like, are they gonna take another 2 years? Because like all those, I mean, I don't know where the contracts are on those kids. I know
Yeah.
Millie Bobby Brown is like a star in the making, right? Like she's like starring in movies now.
Right.
I think the Finn Wolfhard kid is also somebody that is like getting
He's
work.
making the rounds. He's doing like a lot of YouTuber stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly, the splitting, like, kind of at least seeming to kill off the
Harbor.
officer
Yeah.
Hopper, seeming to kill off Hopper, and having Winona Ryder leave town with Elle, but also leaving behind all of the like characters that are actually fun in town. To me, makes it feel like, okay, we need to get rid of all of these characters and start a new thing, because like to end that season that way, where you so forcefully split everyone up, to try to bring them back together when the whole idea is that they're just hometown, people with not a lot of special.
But by the way, that's another thing that they barely dealt with. Like it was like a passing mention, and initially I was kind of confused because when they were talking about like, oh, it looks like you might have to move, it's like, okay, well, I thought that was tied to the fact that the Russians were buying up all these houses because they wanted to continue to build out their thing, because that was the other real estate thing that they go and beat up the mayor about. And so I'm like, oh, well, if they reveal that the Russians are the ones buying it, then I assume
They're stop it.
Yeah, like it's not getting sold out from under them anymore by some kind of like top level thing. But then also it's like we never really got a sense of like where they were going. At least that I remember, there was never really any moment where it's like, geez, I guess the only place that we'd have to go is, Bakersfield or something like that. Like we're gonna have to move across the country.
Yeah.
Because that's where my great aunt is, and she's got room for us in her house or something like that. There was no real tension moment of like, oh, I heard you were going to move. She's like, yeah, I hope not. 3 months later, we're all moving.
Yeah.
Like we've either killed or removed to the point of guest stardom all of our most expensive our most expensive actors.
Yeah.
It's like Winona Ryder, Millie Bobby Brown, and David Harbour like can now be 3-episode arcs in season 3.
The
4.
thing, oh man, that's what they're gonna do. That's what they're gonna do, and that's gonna suck, because that's what they did with. That's a thing that they did with the OA, which is this like metaphysical drama show, right? In season 1, it's all these people getting together, and then in season 2, everybody splits up, and so you just have these like one-off episodes with the other people back in the other place. And I would, I could also see them do that in a season 4. They could have the Winona Ryder episode and then the Hopper episode, but we're really following the D&D crew, because that's like, those are the main characters. Those boys are the main characters of the show, not Winona Ryder.
That's the thing. I know I'm beating a dead Demogorgon here, but like I'm tired of that mythology. Like I care so little about what is happening. I feel like we have gotten to every interesting thing in the Upside Down. We found it all. It's all there. We've explored it. I don't need to see any more.
Especially if they're not talking about it, right? If they're not either explaining why it exists or what caused it to exist or how to stop. Like, if there's a larger issue there, and it's just kind of treating the Upside Down as like, oh no, that's just the thing that's there, and like, well,
yeah, like, what if Elle is trying to find some random thing and then finds like 2 government officials having like a secret meeting because this is the only thing that we know nobody can ever find us is in this, upside down thing that for whatever reason we've tapped into. And that's the inciting incident to a conspiracy that they can figure out. I don't know. 1.5 million different things that they can do with that show, and they'll probably do none of it. And then, they'll kiss and everyone will applaud. Maybe it is just because it found a tremendous preteen following or teen following.
Sure.
So it's like,
I mean,
this seemed like a lot of that. It seemed like a lot of fan service to
yeah.
hey, let's do these things, and like the most like crumbs in the neckbeard 80s nostalgia addict to be like, oh, I remember that movie. That was my favorite.
And I wonder if that speaks to how popular the first season was, right? Because after the first season came out, I don't know if it was the Duffer Brothers or some Netflix person, but they were out there saying, yeah, this is going to be an anthology show. And if what Netflix pulled out from reading social media or whatever was like, no, people like these characters, people like the kids, people like Winona Ryder, whatever, and that becomes the decision to push them further, then I think suddenly you're trying to build a mythos on what should have been a closed room, right? Like you should have solved the Demogorgon and that's it. And isn't the world weird? And isn't there a spark in the world? But otherwise, we got to move on. We got a new like it feels like they had to suddenly extrude out this thing that was not meant to extrude.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Apparently, I am not alone in my Susie killed Hopper thing.
Really? Is that a real hashtag? Susie killed
Apparently,
Hopper?
no. Apparently, a Time magazine, I guess, took a. Yeah, no. Apparently, that was a thing that went on Twitter, was that Susie killed Hopper.
Did this one character completely alter the Stranger Things season 3 ending? People seem pretty convinced from Time.com. Wow. I mean, it's true though. Justin.
Dude.
It was so friggin' long. It was so long. I just
I think there's actually a funnier joke in there if like they get to the first thing and then it's like, okay, but for real, give me the thing, and then it's like, okay, well we cut it off, we get like a little bit of whimsy, and then we get, this other thing, but boy. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Bryce, we've been abandoned by everyone we know and love. So let's wrap this up.
That's right. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being patrons and getting this early at patreon.com/weirdthings. For Andrew Main, Brian Brushwood, and Justin Robert Young. It's been after.
Goddamn right.
There we go. Hey, we did it.
We did it. We shit on Stranger Things for an hour. Definitely a thing we did.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you tomorrow. We're gonna have Mike TV on Night Attack tomorrow.
Or will we?
Oh, I hope so.
Or will we? All right. See you, man.
Bye. And you guys have a good afternoon too. Bye. 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 Cord Killers in a few hours.